to Urban X-Files. Today's video goes into more ghost stories, but as we near Christmas, I thought I would include some Christmas spooky stories. And today's video is about a certain road, or street even, in Liverpool that is known for its time slips and has a very old row of shops and various other things, and it does date back to a very long time. Now, this shop you could walk past every day and not notice anything about it, but the one thing that stands out about this specific shop is that it's had very many different types of merchandise sold. Nobody seems to stay in that building for a long period of time. Now, this video takes us back to sometime in the 60s and 70s, and it was near a very popular shop that sold all kinds of things, like a department store, whereas like it sold TVs, it sold everything, hoovers, cookers, cleaners, various different things. So it had all kinds of stuff. And so because it was near to that shop, it always had a lot of like traffic where people had gone into that shop and left and moved on and carried on walking down the street and come across this unusual shop. And on this particular occasion, this couple got a shop to start selling various items, and the guy and his girlfriend had started to work in the shop. Well, his girlfriend just helped. She had a different job elsewhere. So this particular shop had been signed over to a young man who had decided to run his own business. He did have the help of his girlfriend, but she worked elsewhere, so he ran the shop on his own with a little bit of help. Now, the guy who we'll call Jack had was working away, and the doorbell of the shop opened, and the little door thing rang, and this old gentleman come into the shop, and Jack had said, "Oh, hello, you okay?" And they had a little chat, and the old gentleman had asked if he had a specific item. So Jack turned around and said, "Yes, of course, just give me a minute, I will go and fetch it from the stock room." And as he was chatting to the man while he was looking for the things, he said, have you noticed anything strange happen in this shop?" And Jack asked, "Strange in what way?" He said, "Well, this building is really haunted. Even when I was a kid, I'd always heard strange stories coming from this shop. And it was always worse when it come to Christmas. I don't know whether that was a link with it or what, but it was really, really creepy." So Jack continued asking, "What happened? Do you know any more information?" So as Jack was looking for this item, he found it, and he said to the man, "Oh, 1 minute, I'll be out now," because the man hadn't replied to Jack's previous question. So when Jack come out of the storeroom, there was nobody there. Jack had to go and check on the floor to make sure he hadn't collapsed. This old gentleman hadn't collapsed, and he couldn't find him. Now, there was nowhere else for him to go, because as you come into the shop, you had the counter. So the only way would be to lift up one of the panels on the counter to go through to where Jack worked, and then into the storeroom. So there was nowhere else he could go other than back out of the front door. as many shops did back then, always had a bell catch that when the door opened, the bell rang. And the same when the door opened to go out, the bell rang. So this particular occasion, Jack come back out of the storeroom to find nobody there. So he put the item back down. He was like, I didn't hear the bell. Strange. And then that was that. Didn't think anything else of it. So when Jack went home, he was having tea with his girlfriend Jill. And Jack had said to Jill that, I had this weird customer in today. He come in and he asked me to get this item. So I was like, yeah, okay. I went into the storeroom and got his item, and I was chatting away to him. And he asked me this weird question. He said, have you ever noticed anything strange happening while I've been working here? Which I found was like a very odd question back then. And his girlfriend Jill turned around and said, oh, Jack, you're just daft. You believe anything anyone tells you. I think the guy probably just left the shop quick and that was it. I don't think there was anything spooky about it. There's no such things as ghosts, so don't be stupid. So that put Jack in his place. So Jill carried on the conversation of all things that she had experienced that day. So a few days later, back and forth from work, Jill come home when they were having tea. Come home for tea after Jack prepared tea. She come home and she said, Jack, I have got the best idea yet. What we'll do, we'll get rid of this flat because we keep paying out all our rent in this building and there is plenty of room. You've got the whole shop and there's space above the shop that we could use as our living quarters. It had a kitchen, a bathroom, it's got everything that we'll need. And he was like, so before he could even say yes or no, she'd already decided, and that's what they were going to do. So her plan was, think of all the money we can save. We can then go and get married, go on a nice honeymoon, and then we can save up and buy a house. So Jack was happy just to go along with whatever Jill said. And the next few weeks followed with they emptying the house that they lived in, and Jack had got the works van he used to fill up, when he was collecting stock and things, and use that to empty his house and bring it all to his shop. So there was some old bedroom furniture that was in the top loft of this building. So Jill is like, we'll leave the stuff in that house, it's in good condition, so whoever moves in next can make use of it. We don't need it because you've got all that stuff in the shop above the flat above your shop. And he was like, okay. So they move the items in and they make it nice and comfortable, and the weeks went by. Then something happened that gave Jack a fright. This experience truly terrified Jack. This was the week running right up to Christmas, and Jack was upstairs putting stuff away while the shop was closed. So he was putting clothes away, just tidying up, because Jill had something with her work colleagues before Christmas. The close of the business closes over Christmas. So what happened to him had haunted him ever since this day. He was upstairs in the loft and he was putting things away, and he was looking for a specific item that he put down and couldn't find it. So as he was looking around, he noticed some shadows move under where the door was. So it looked like there was someone on the other side, or some people on the other side of the door. So Jack froze still with fear, And he listened for a while and heard a bit of walking and stuff like that, and he shouted, "Who's there?" And as he done so, he noticed some fluid start to leak under the door. And when he looked down, he was horrified to see a pool of blood trickle into his room. Jack stood there, froze with fear. So he didn't know what to do, and he started to back up, make his way to the stairs, to come down the stairs and into his shop, where he called his girlfriend and said, "Something's happened upstairs. There's blood come through the door. I think someone's like broke in and there's like something's gone on." He's like, "You better call the police." So she said, "I can't come home now because I'm in the middle of doing something and then we're going out for a few drinks with work. Call the police now." So he did. Jack called the police. Not long later, the police arrived and they entered his shop, and he was in no fit state to joke around. And the policeman said, "We've come due to a report of some disturbances and that." So he said the ambulance is on the way because there was a lot of blood that had been seen by the witness. So Jack was like, yeah, it was me that rang. I was upstairs. I was tidying up the rooms upstairs, and I was looking for something. And then I heard people in the room next door. And the next minute, I shouted, "Who's there?" And then something happened, and then all blood started to pour through, like someone had like really cut themselves, or it was something. So he takes the police upstairs, and the police examine and find that there's no blood. There's nothing that would look like blood. There was no cleaning products to clean any blood that would be there. There was nothing there. So the police, obviously not in the mood, run up to Christmas and getting stupid people playing pranks, and he got a warning and said, "Next time, sir, we won't let you off. We'll arrest you for wasting police time." So Jack was pretty down that night. Jack was sat terrified, so he didn't want to wait in the building on his own. So he went for a couple of drinks with one of his friends, and he sort of met up with his girlfriend before she was due to come home. And they were going into their house, so they walked into the shop and then went up the stairs, locked everywhere up, and they were sat on the couch and talking, and he was explaining everything that had happened. He said that he was stood there, he was putting things away, and he was looking for something, heard a commotion, asked who was there, blood come through, then he called the police, and the police sort of give him a telling off, told him not to waste police time, blah blah blah. And Jill's reply was something along the lines, "If you are losing the plot, you need to go and see a doctor. You're hearing things, seeing things, something's not right." And Jack was pretty angry at this insensitive comment, because what he'd experienced actually upset him. It terrified him, and it really upset him. So that night he was like, "I am not sleeping up there. There is something not right up there. I seen what I seen. It happened." And she was like, "You know what? Fine. I'm tired. I'm going to bed. You can sleep downstairs on the couch or wherever you want to sleep, but I can't be doing with this attitude." So Jack was like, fine, took up in a huff, got some blankets and made a bed on the shop floor. So Jill was up in the bedroom, shaking her head because she was angry, and she was absolutely knackered from the partying she'd done. So she went to sleep, and this was early hours. She'd fell asleep, and she couldn't tell you exactly what time she fell asleep, but she was awoken to being shook. And as she woke up, it was an earthquake, because she felt the bed she was on was shaking, it was tremoring. And when she looked up, she realised, she thought she was dreaming, because she was outside looking up at the stars. And she said she had a feeling of like when you are going over a bump in the car and it goes up and down fast and you get that feeling in your stomach. That's what she had. So when she realised what was going on, she opened her eyes and she seen this strange looking man who was stood over the headboard. She said this man looked very strange. She was like, "What are you doing? Who are you? This is what's going on." And he smiled, this evil smile. He had a pointed beard. The way she described it was he would look like a Van Dyke type devil. His eyes were like a green, dark, deep green. And he had these white teeth which looked like he had fangs. And he spoke to her that she didn't understand. So when she realised that she was actually travelling up towards the stars on this bed, she was freaked out, and this evil man tilted the bed, which caused some of her things she had on the bed to fall to the floor. So like a teddy that they had on the bed, some cushions and different things. And she prayed to God to help her because she was terrified, because she looked down and she could see that the drop below was from a substantial height. She must have been 500-600 feet into the air. So when she opened her eyes again after saying some prayers, she said she looked at the man and his dark eyes that sort of penetrated right into her, and she was like, "What do you want? What do you want?" He knew her name. He said, "Jill, you are mine," in a deep, raspy voice. "If you do not obey my commands, you will fall to the floor as your teddies just did." So she didn't know what to do. She was screamed as loud as she could, and he was like, "There's no point, nobody can hear you up here. Your screams are falling on deaf ears." So she was clutched to the bed through fear of being thrown to the floor from this great height. She noticed this man sort of had an orangey red tinge to his skin, like it glowed. And she remembered something. After she prayed, for some reason, something in her mind popped to get in the crucifix that she had around her neck. She always wore a crucifix. The only thing she could think of was to grab the crucifix, and she thrust it into the face of this demonic looking man. The man screamed, and she prayed out loud once again. She prayed to Jesus, "Please help." And this creature screamed, and what she felt like he let go of the bed, and she started to feel a sensation of falling from a great height. Now, she was convinced that she was going to fall to her death from this great height. She'd witnessed her stuff that was on the bed, her pillows, her toy teddy things, all fell to the floor. And as she was falling and praying, she shut her eyes, and then she just collapsed. She lost consciousness through the fear of being dropped. And when she sort of come around, she said that she felt like she was having a dream, that the bed that she was on was floating but was being held by angels, and these angels were helping this bed go down safely and back into the loft where the bed was kept. So when she come around, she woke up and she realized, like, right, I'm still here, it must have been a bad dream. and she was that terrified. She ran downstairs to her boyfriend Jack, and she woke Jack up in floods of tears, and she was like, Jack, 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 she's had a horrible nightmare, blah, blah, blah. And he woke up and he comforted his girlfriend. He didn't want to say stuff along the lines of, I told you so, because he could see the fear in his girlfriend's face. So he comforted his girlfriend, and he went back upstairs and he collected some belongings and stuff, and they left the flat and collected stuff, and she noticed that she couldn't find the teddy that was on the bed. So she was like, it was there when I went to sleep. Now in my dream, that nightmare I had, that teddy fell to the floor. So when they were going to, they'd spoken to some family, and they were going to stay for Christmas in this family member's house. And so they had their bags, got their presents that they got for their family members, and they were walking to their family's house. And as they're walking, they walk past this street down to where this old church was, and there on the steps of the church was her old teddy. She was like, how the hell? And the cushions as well, the pillows that were on the bed, they had all been on the grounds of this church in various places around, her teddy and her pillows. This sort of made her realise the dream she had really wasn't a dream. So she hugged Jack and she said, I'm so sorry for not believing you, I'm so sorry. And he's like, it's okay, Jill, it's okay. So she picked up her teddy and her pillows, and then he went to their family's house, and they stayed there for over Christmas and the New Year, and they kept the shop shut. And Jack said he's moving everything out that shop, he's relocating, he didn't want to take anything from there, so any bits of things he could leave in the shop, fearing that whatever was there would attach to him. So he just left as much as he could and got all his personal belongings and Jill's personal belongings and left. So after that, she went to a priest, and the priest blessed her and him and their belongings, and that was the end of that. And Jack often wondered if that old man was some kind of person giving him a warning about the evil things that went on in this building. So that was the story of this couple in that shop. Now, a decade or so later, times moved on. The department store's no longer there. Obviously, that shop's no longer there. And there were two people who had come across this shop to rent that was quite cheap for its location. Now, these had nothing to do with the people who'd been there in the past. They didn't know anything about it. They had no sort of nothing related to them. Now, these people turned it into a fashion store of some sorts, where it's all retro clothes and different things. So they also altered clothes and different things, and did on some designs themselves and sold retro clothing. Now, this was sometime in the 80s. One of the girls was due to have a baby, so she left her partner to go and have the baby, and left the other girl run the shop. So she had a sign saying she couldn't take on any new bookings, and this was she was only able to for the next week, until obviously her partner had come back. So when the shop had closed, she thought, I'm gonna have a little mooch upstairs, and she goes up up the stairs, and she could see that this part of the building hadn't been used for a couple of years. It was just left, it was all empty. So she checked those rooms, nothing really interesting in there. On one of the top floors, she could see that where the floorboards are, the carpet had been removed, and there was between the door of each room, there was like a stain on the floor, which she wasn't quite sure what that was. She thought, someone might have spilled something. Just to add into this story, that stain that she'd seen on the floor was in the same spot that Jack had seen blood come through the door. But she didn't know any of this. She'd never met them. She had nothing to do with them. And then when she was checking the floor, she found that there was an old bed, an old bedroom furniture, really, really old, solidly built stuff that you wouldn't really be able to sort of dismantle and move with ease. You would need to get a professional builder to come and dismantle, a joiner, woodworker to do these things. And she'd found like various old in one of the cupboards, a box of old postcards and old diaries and old books. Some of these books go back to the 1800s. So she's like, wow, this is pretty interesting. She noticed that there was like diaries and different things, and what she noticed about in the diary is that the handwriting was like, she was really impressed by it because it was all old, like calligraphy style, really neat. And as she was reading through, she noticed as the months it started, and then on the run up towards the end of the year, that the writing become erratic, and she couldn't understand what it was saying. So the days had gone by, and after the shop had closed each time, she would go to each floor and continue her investigation into these cool old items. And she'd found things and words that she didn't understand. She found a notebook with the word jinn, which is the Arab word for demon. And she got a bit frightened at that because she'd seen pentagrams and other strange symbols in this notebook. It actually frightened her because she could decipher certain things that looked like blood, with stuff that looked like it was from some old occult stuff. So she knew a little bit about it, not too much, she just recognised it. And there was other words in there that she couldn't pronounce but seemed to remember very well. So, and as she was crouched down reading through these things, she heard a creak in the floorboards coming from the other room. Now this caused her to freeze. She was like, oh, someone's up here with me. And then she heard the floorboard creaking like it was walking towards her. She turned round and could see what was like a fog. And in this fog was a man who she said he looked like a devil. He had a pointy beard, he had a long nose, and he had these like glowing eyes, these penetrating going eyes. They weren't red and evil, they were like a dark, like hypnotic green. And she couldn't speak, she couldn't move. And she froze with fear. So she got the book, threw it towards this figure in the fog, and ran as fast as she could down the stairs. She didn't even bother locking the shop up. She went right across the road and into one of the shops across the street. She was in floods of tears, and the old shop owner come and comforted the girl, asked what was going on, and she told them everything. She said, you'll probably think I'm crazy and different things. He was like, no, it's okay, tell me what happened. So after everything, he believed what she was saying. So he went off. He went, just okay. You stay there. Have a cup of tea. I just need to make a phone call. He made a phone call, and another friend of his turned up at the shop, and he went over to the shop across the road, and after 20 minutes come back and said that I believe everything you've said, the things that I've found. And he read the book and he said, I didn't bring it over, I wanted to leave it where it was. Everything's left there. It looks like years ago someone was practicing things with the occult, and it looks like they've summoned something, because there's something that lurks in that property. It's been there for a long time. I don't know all the details about it. I didn't want to hang around, but you are safe. I suggest that you get your things from there and you move away from it, because I get the sense that it knows you now and it's hoping that you'll stay. So he offered to do some sort of exorcism, and the word of exorcism terrified this girl because of the film The Exorcist. She was convinced it was something really evil and she didn't want to mess with it, so she left. And then she explained to her partner and said everything. You know, she's not working there no more. She'll give her the whole business. She wants nothing to do with it. But after, when she'd had her baby and they sat down with their both partners and the man from the shop and the priest, they decided to just leave. So they took their bits and left. They didn't want to take anything that was already in the property. And then she said that when they had left and she took one last look back, and she said that she looked up in the window and seen the man that her friend had said she'd seen in the fog. It looked like there was a man in the loft looking out of the window down at the girls. She described the man as having a pointy beard and hypnotic eyes, and it looked like he had an orange tinge glow to his skin. Needless to say, this caused her to avoid that street for the rest of her life. She was that terrified. So the street in today's story is a very old street in the city, and there have been many reported paranormal incidents that have occurred here over the years. So what do you make of these experiences? If you've experienced anything like this yourself, please do get in touch. It would be interesting to hear. And always be careful when you're going into old places, because you never quite know what's there. But I hope you enjoyed this Christmas spooky story. Take care, and I'll see you all in the next video.